Okay, we're holding now ois hey. The minute that earth moving the diak apostle keish echelis. On this, we can now appreciate the nuance, the wording keish echelis, a consuming fire. The lechei is nicht verstandig. To metar sein die Mare von Kvod Hashem is bloß negiert zu sagen, as es hat ausgesehen wie fire. If you want to describe the appearance of Hashem's glory, it should have just mentioned that it appeared like fire. Zu dem was darf dabei zugeben, während as das ist gewesen wie an Eish Echelis. Why did the Torah have to say that it appeared as a consuming fire? Just say it appeared as fire. What's the deal? What's the nuance? Eish Echelis. Apian now is das verstanden bepatches, but based on what we explained before, above, it's self-understood. Yes, as the mechoven in dem pasuk does to masber sein. The Pirush from dem pasuk shela acharov vayavi meisha b'seich anon, since the Torah wants to teach us that the Torah now wants to clarify the meaning of what does it mean Moshe came into the midst of the Anan into the cloud, as the Inyan is given an Oshen was hat sich geschaffen von dem was Mara Kvod Hashem is given kaish.
The king or now?
Again, let's start again about piano. But piano is this first time to be pashtas. Hayes is the mechuven, and then pasuk does to masber sein den Pirush from them pasuk shel achar v'yavi meisha b'seich anon. Since the Torah wants to, with the pasuk beforehand, the Torah wants to preface and tell us how Moshe came into the Anon, as the Indian is given an ocean was hat sich geschaffen von them was Mara Kvod Hashem is given keish, because the cloud was in a smoky cloud, which was created from the glory of Hashem, which was fire. The Dibber is the pasuk meisav v'matlish keish echeles. That's why the Torah stresses that it was a fire which consumes. A smoke doesn't come from fire itself, nor from an ocean was is echeles. Fire doesn't create smoke. It has to be a fire which is consuming something. Echeles verbrennt die Sach in welches is netches. It has to be, smoke doesn't emerge from fire itself. Smoke forms a fire that consumes whatever the fire catches on. And he says in the brackets, B'chlal is that nitkin ish. A heavenly fire is generally not a fire which consumes. As we learned by the Maisa with the burning bush, by Yard Gamer Balabas Eish Gamer Vaslein Nena Uko. It says that he appeared in the flame of fire, but the bush was not consumed, because fire which comes from above doesn't consume. Their fire doesn't make smoke. Their fire, after the pasuk medayik zayin, so therefore the pasuk has to medayik over here, as does yogiven an ishichelas, that here there was a consuming fire. Was the fire as if the fire geschaffen an on kimin ocean, and this reason he created a cloud of smoke. And that's why it says, it doesn't only say it was an Eish, but it was Eish Echeles. Vav. Alpiko now that werden verstandig, for was Rashi darf bewohnen. Was der Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe Shvil B'Seichi Dafke in unser Pasuk und beheimshich zu sein Pirush Anan Zekim in Ocean. Based on this, we can now appreciate why Rashi needed to add specifically the Pasuk. In the Pasuk, it says that inside of it, Hashem made a path for Moshe. Right, that Rashi says it was a Kimin Ashan, and then he says that there was a path for Moshe Rabbeinu. If the Anan was the same type of Nan that was mentioned in the previous psukim, so we don't have to we don't have to address how Moshe Rabbeinu was able to get into the Anan. Moshe can go even to the Rafal. But since this Anan is a kind of smoke, because this type of cloud that we're talking about is a smoky cloud. And the nature of the cloud is to burn. So when you say that this Anan is a kind of smoke, So if a person is like in the smoke, the person and his clothing naturally become black. So he says, so now the Rebbe says, how could it possibly Moshe Rabbeinu have look when he ascended the mountain to Hashem to receive the Torah? It's like disgraceful. You're coming in, it's all black. If we're talking about the Har Oshan, that there was a cloud which was very smoky, so smoke creates anything which, if you see a house, a house which is burning down, and God forbid if someone's there, even a little bit, he starts becoming his whole clothing becomes very, very black. So the Chayra, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to go receive the Har Sinai, and he comes in with this hot box mouth, and he comes in like all black and all and all dirty. It's not very respectful to Hashem. Therefore, Rashi continues and said, inside of it, Hashem made a path for Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe is gegangen in dem Shvil, and Moshe went into the path. Doesn't say, sorry, I skipped. When Moshe is gegangen in dem Shvil, Ba'ifin as the ocean at him need barit. So, therefore, Rashi says that Hashem made him a Shvil, and Moshe went into the Shvil. So Moshe didn't come to Hashem all with black clothing, because Hashem made a path for him. And if there's a path for him, he didn't get affected by the smoke. Zayin. Es bleibt aber nicht verstandig. However, we still need to clarify a few things. Aleph, why does Rashi say that this anan is a kind of smoke? Based on what we explained till now, it was actually smoke, not an anan, which is a kind of smoke. It was smoke mamish. Base for vaz Dr. Pasa, we have Moshe b'seicha on the need b'seicha oshan. Why does the Torah say, or why does Rashi say that Moshe came in the midst of anan and not in the midst of a smoke? So the Rebbe says this is the beer in the bezah. Explanation: the Har Sinai is Midbar Sinai. Har Sinai is located where? In the Sinai desert. Befrat the Reish Har. And specifically at the top of the mountain. The glory of Hashem appeared. The glory of Hashem appeared as a consuming fire. Where? In the desert of Sinai, at the top of the mountain. So this is not a place where trees, plants, and grass grow. It's a place of stone and dust. When Sibas Oshin is dafke, as the fire is, when Sibas Oshin is dafke, as the fire is oichel umchala davar niser v'ilan ischuli. Now, smoke is produced only when a fire consumes flammable things like trees. You have that a lot in California. It's not when it comes to inanimate objects like stones and dust. So that's not flammable.
There's no this stuff in the mid, but
right, that's what the Rebbe is saying. So l'chayra, if we're talking about Mount Sinai and we're in Har Sinai, on the top of the mountain, there's no ilonim, there's no trees, there's nothing flammable over there. The Hebrew Zakdash is like so practical. Like after the Rebbe explains it, it's you think how else can I learn Rashi? But before that, the Rebbe is just saying practically, you can't say it's kimin oshan because how did it become flammable? Therefore, Rashi as does not given the anosham mamish. Therefore, it wasn't an actual oshan or blaze kimin oshan. It was like a smoke. Anan from the chels lefasadim if an hasina is given as a oshan, because the smoke produced by consuming something which is inanimate objects on Har Sinai was a stam was writ via fanatzimer was writ verbrand from the leish. So it's what he's saying is that. It wasn't actually smoke, it was a kind of smoke. This smoke produced a burning inanimate objects on Har Sinai was like regular smoke produced from vegetation being burnt by fire. My time about dust isn't given on ocean too. Now, how is it possible? When fire burns stones, it's not flammable, so there's no smoke. So the Rebbe says, because this was not a natural smoke, so therefore, since it wasn't, we asked before, why not say Oshan? Because it wasn't a natural smoke. It was a smoke from Hashem. So therefore, he calls it Anan. Why does Rashi say Kimin Hashem? Because at the end of the day, the fire that consumed, it consumed only stones. It didn't have flammable objects. And therefore, it was Kimin. So basically, now, according to Nigla, we answered all of our shilas of why Rashi says Dafka over here, not over there, because, and why the pasuk Umar Kved Hashem comes as a hemshich, because over here we're talking about there was a cloud, but not like the clouds that we said before. The cloud over here was a cloud that produced smoke. It was an Eish Echeles. How did it produce smoke? If l'chayr it wasn't flammable, because it was an Eish from the Eibishter. And that's what Rashi says. He made a shvil. Why did he make a shvil? Because it wasn't covered. It wouldn't be covered for Hashem, for Moshe Rabbeinu to pass through the smoke to come to Hashem. Beautiful. Okay, so that's basically our pinigla. So now he says a pichsidis. In the Pirish Rashi from the Warren of Terah from Chassidus, he explains when Parshas Yisro, when describing Har Sinai during Mount Terah, the Torah mentions explicitly that it was smoke. It says Har Sinai, Oshan Kuloi, that Har Sinai was smoke, because Hashem had descended upon it. So the Torah in Parshas Yisro says that Har Sinai was Oshan Kula, was smoke. And in our pasuk, we don't call it, even though it is smoke, we call it Anan, we call it cloud. So the question is why? Is why in Parshas Yisro are we calling the smoke Oshan, and why over here are we calling it Anan? He says, what's the explanation? An Oshan kipshut nemzich from them davar nisr. So actual smoke is produced, like we said, by an object being burnt, because the object mitzad them was the davar nisr was a chemer gashmi, and the eish is bechal geshem in the kelein gedim and teitzos and Oshan. So smoke are produced depending on the composition being burnt. So he says like this: when something is refined as being burnt, he says this. Under Farzan and Oshan Faran Chilukim Bachazan Tali in the Muhus from Chemer Nisif. But the Davar Nisif is a Chemer Dak, Vertus Far Brent Schneller in Dan is Eichter Oshan Edlen in Unshitter. Shaking in the Davar Nisif is a Chemer Avegas, is Dan der Oshan Gedichter un Greber, un Gresser. So he says very simple. He says that when you have different types of smoke, when this thing which is flammable is refined, it's not so thick, so the smoke is thinner. When the smoke catches onto something flammable, but it's very grub, it's very coarse, so the smoke is much thicker. So he says, von dem ist verstandig, as in dem Ocean, von jeder Sache ist nicker, so psichareis, wiffel der Chemer, von der Sache ist Gas, das kommt der Gile bikleina dauer. So if you want to know like the type of thing that it's burning, just look at how the smoke reflects. It discloses the object's nature. So this works in a physical sense. It also works in a spiritual sense. In the Bittel, the Kalei von Dwarim Glamata Tzalikus, durch dem Gile Ishe Lamata, Shalamailo, werd Nechal, the Nichla, the Yeshus von Welt, und es wird in Oifkiton, the Bittel Kalei Tzalikus. So he says that when you have the revelation of fire that consumes worldly selfhood, it causes worldly matters to become bottle and absorbed in godliness. And thus is Baruchni is der Inyan Ocean was biased in Koloyim from the Yeshus and Bittel von Welt. And this is the idea of the smoke. Smoke represents the consumption of like selfhood and bittel of the world to Hashem. So he says beautiful and test, and thus is the chilik zwischen die zwei psukim and all. This is the difference between the two above psukim. A pasuk var Sinai Ocean kulei dat sich wegen zman man teira. Und jetzt der Gile Alikus von man teira is gemein mit der Chrum Eil Lamato. Der pasuk is mavshak bnei Asher yor the love. Hashem ba'eish the Gile is gemein mit Tzad Lamailo, und der Elam is noch dann given. Agash mi b'chumri was is nit mezufaf. Der Riber hat der Gile Alikus dann aufget an der Bittel und Kulein von Welt, und even von Har Sinai Ocean kulei. Was der Riber begedel Ocean weiß, as the Chumris or Elam is not given, Dach is up. So he says like this. In the previous parsha, the Torah is speaking about the time of Man Torah. During Man Torah, the revelation came because Hashem's initiative. Hashem descended upon it, and the revelation was like prompted on high. So the world at that moment was still a physical and material state that wasn't really refined. So Hashem's revelation caused the world to become bottled and consumed, as described in the pasuk, that the whole Har Sinai was in smoke. In other words, like we said, the large quantity of smoke shows that there was a lot of coarseness in the world that needed to be refined. Now, in contrast to our parsha, was letzich wegen des man from nach Matan Torah, which speaks about the time after Matan Torah. Nach dem Bittul v'zdachach was Matan Torah gepeilt by, and this is after when Matan Torah brought a nullification and refinement to the world. So therefore, the nature of the world was not so coarse. Therefore, the glory that Hashem generated into the world after Matan Torah, so since the world was more refined, so it wasn't actually smoke, nor the rave dakusa in the nikra b'teidah b'shem Moshe kiyim b'shem Anan. This is like the lashon of Teirah, that because the world was refined, so the fire didn't cause it to actually become a smoke, but it was kimin which a cloud does not show how there was a kilayin, how there was a consumption and elevation of physical matters to spiritual. If them is Rashi being a Shatan Megala, so therefore Rashi, who we know Rashi that I've always said has the wine of Torah, teaches as the anan is kimin oshino, that is a type of smoke. Yes, as in Yoni is nit der gile likus ma'ila wieder anan was vert der mont in the psukim frier, nor das kommt von der Marak with Hashem ke'esh chelas, likus perden bittel and mitzis elam is kimin oshino. So here the pasuk is not discussing the revelation of Hashem prompted on high, as it was in the case of the cloud mentioned earlier. Rather, the cloud over here is from Hashem's glory, which appeared as consuming fire, and the manner in which God, Hashem's elikus, like obliterated the world's feeling and selfhood, and therefore this anan is a type of smoke. Oich in them is done inyan from Oshel. Here too, you have the underlying of a smoke. Afrudis v'achrudis was kum from them klein achemer, which this is a dusty like and like a murky feeling, which is consumed by physical substance. When we bad as the macham von hin ateres k'tei zu machen von Welt. Adila yisbar b'tachtenim is der fire nan zeh der anan is in Weltkomesha. Hat gedarf an eingehen zu mekam sein luchis und bringen die Zelematas Kiminashanu is Sagilim Momaila was peiled Kilaina Bital Chemer from Ivray. The Rebbe says, this Anan, what's the purpose of the world we know is to make it here B'Tachtenim. Therefore, this Anan, the cloud on which Hashem needed to enter in order to receive the Torah and then bring it down, is a kind of smoke. It's a godly revelation that consumes and nullifies the physicality of Hashem's creation. It says, Nor was Zaindik nach dem Gile from Antera was hat aufgetan als dafür was bitte voll in Chemer Elam is there fire nicht geworden Ocean Kule wie beis dem Aschos Klemanten nor blaze kamin Ocean aber in Ocean was sein. Now, since this occurred after the revelation of Mount Torah, after a general refinement and nullification of the world, so the mountain didn't become mamish smoke like the beginning of the revelation of Mount Torah. Why? Because when you say smoke, that shows that it was very, very coarse. So therefore, we say it's a kind, but the smoke was still necessary. Want to give us mamish a minute? I'm sorry. Good. He says this. There's some people that protest. What connection do I have to do with the mundane matters? In der Prinne von Chaya, da viele nicht zu mehr, aber nicht haben, so tun euch mit die Sachen, in Welt, was ein Zug von dem, man sieht Chomris, bei Jesu in Welt, setzt sich nicht kein Schum Chayes. Bis es a viele, wenn es ist mehr, ich weiß, es ist mit Zativa nicht kein Klied dazu, es ist in mit Nechas der Ish, es darf sein früher, der Vinyan from the Watchley. So, when it comes to Tzimech and Chaya, yeah, I'll deal with those type of people, but the Daimon won't have to get involved. So, when they, as we move Perlin, as a Ocean Vallah, euch in dem niedrigsten Zug von dem in Welt, weil mit dem ist verbunden dem Tafels von Mantera, als der Ingen Ocean, der Philoyen in Aloye von der Femer Elam, so aufgetan werden nicht nur in Zemer, nor euch in der Hard Daimim. So what's the lesson? The lesson is that we see in Mantera that the ocean was pearl even into the Daimim. And they come with the Nochatinus, is doch, I'm Savik with the Savik Kamtin. So if I'm going to deal with the maneuver, I'm going to become a maneuver as well. durch der Arbeit zu Pell sein an Ocean in Dwonen Atachtenim, wird doch keinem seinem man soll einrichten, is doch gleicher, man soll nicht vernehmen mit sie. If there is the emphasis of the fair, you can say to yourself, if I'm going to be dealing with the smoke, I'm going to be dealing with the daimim, I'm going to become messy myself. So what do we say? Also, like Baruch Hu Meisha, Shvil B'Seichel. Die Pchinas Meisha, was ist da, in der Schamme von jeder Lieden, sie wird sich nicht einrichten, sie wird bleiben im Rein, weil sie geht durch Shvil, sie ist allemal Ba'amana Ita Yisbarach. So just like Meisha Rabbeinu didn't get dirty because Hashem in the Shvil, every person has a level of Meisha Rabbeinu that gives him the Shvil, he doesn't get dirty. Beis, Nachman, Pnimis Yilin, wären euch die Keiches Gelim nicht verschmiert von dem Ocean, weil in Emes ist es gar nicht kein Ocean. Es ist Blaze, kein Ocean, es ist ein Hinien, was zet nach euch die Ocean. So we're saying it's not Ocean, it's kein Ocean. Das heißt, das, was die Welt ist, Malum und Master Velikus, ist es nur kein von der Metzius zu lieb, dem Ingen von Mechir. This that the world conceals ungodliness is only kein. Eumen wollt gesehen im Emes, wollt dann nicht gewinnt kein Ort auf Mechir. If we would have seen the Emes, there would have been any Bechira. And noch mehr, wie bald Helem kommt zu lieber Tafels von Kedusha, es ist Bemes gorn anon Kedusha, Kuk, Taka Reis für Ocean, wer dover Chumri, was viele noch sein Kiloin, weil Aliyah bleibt in Rafnoris, aber das ist Bläse, was nearly in die Bosse. Mit Primis ist es ein Hinge von Kedusha, und der ganze Tag ist sein, ist beschwört des Emes Kedusha. Und das ist der Idee, als man muss eingehen, und durchgehen dem Ocean, durch dem ist mit Makabel, Tere Meisher, Binnekul, Rathas, Kol Efabefel, Pnas Meisher, Menashe, ad Makabel gewinnt die Tere nach der Akdama, wo Yavim Meisher bezeh Onan, was an anderes Gemin Ocean Hul. A Fashkas ist der Schab bis Zenius. Ein Ingen von Helem, aber durch dem kommen, weil hier bei Arboim Jem, bei Arboim Leila, und man hat Tere auf der Stumose. Und danach ist das jeden Mamschiff in Gufe Bechelt Helem, was das ist der Hemmschiff von noch Pashel Mishpatim, Pashel Stum, was der Midrash Schande Besefel von die Dwonen Bashti, so bekesse macht man ein Midrash die Schwerf, was durch dem führt euch die Kawana von der Savakal Schwerf, die Schwerf, die Daftem. She says that basically each individual infuses Torah into the corporal body and designated environment, and this explains the continuation of Pashas Truma, that to us the Midrash Shechanta B'Seichem, from physical objects, gold, silver, we make a sanctuary for Hashem. By doing so, this we fulfill Hashem's purpose of making the B'Tachkenim.